Hi, Healing fam. How you guys doing? Hope you guys are doing wonderful. Thank you for checking my channel. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up, a like, so we can push my videos, so we can carry on these conversations. In today's video, we're talking about marriage being hard. People are coming on, putting their perspectives on marriage, the good, the bad, the ugly, the positive, not so positive, the takeaways, the lessons. I love it. I love it from the perspective of positives and the negatives and what to blend it together to make it a beautiful union. It's possible, but it takes that knowledge, that language, and that willingness to do the work. Okay, bye.
Being married is harder than I ever imagined.
I think one of the biggest regrets in marriage for me is that I wished I'd picked a man that had friends. Because a man without friends is practicing friendship on you.
I've been to many weddings. I was in my own over a decade long marriage. Divorced now, going on 3 years, but separated like 2 years prior. So that's about like 5 years. It's like right when the pandemic started. Who knows? The pandemic maybe they did. But so many lessons, and I did a couple of videos over time talking about lessons learned during that time. And I use my story truly to hopefully teach a younger person, a younger woman, a younger man coming up, desiring marriage. Marriage is a beautiful thing. Marriage is only hard when you find yourself with the person. I don't want to say the wrong person, because the wrong person for you is the right person for somebody. Your red flag is a green flag for somebody. People do change. What started off beautiful, maybe your kids, you have a house, a picket fence, 2 dogs, blah, blah, blah. The cars, the bleed, the blood, the businesses, the people change. People grow and change. And having to be friends and having the dance, as I call it, and continue to have that dance is, but when people change and that inability to want to work, because it's work, marriage is only hard when that work, the people within it are not willing to do the work. The people, not one person. One person cannot do the work while the other person is not willing to do the work of making it continue to be wholesome and beautiful. That's when you realize, maybe the fit is not fitting anymore. And you might have to make that decision without staying too long in consideration of, should I stay? Should I go? Should I go? Should I stay? Driving yourself crazy. But I get it. It takes time. Sometimes confidence-wise, self-esteem-wise, self-worth-wise, and money-wise. Before I get into more detail of my maybe 3 or 4 lessons post-divorce, accountability, what I have taken away from the experience of being in that, I want to play this real quick. This coach, I love her so much. Wemmy, if you're checking my channel one day, I want to come to your podcast. You are amazing. Mwah. Anyways, let's play her.
That were at play, like everything being the woman's fault, and putting both the blame and the need for forgiveness to look the other way at her husband's transgressions on her. So after the debacle with the affair, my grandmother did eventually give birth to a son, but one child was apparently not enough for her husband's family. They decided that he should marry someone else, and they had the perfect person for him. So he took my grandmother to court to divorce her. Lesson number 2, if someone doesn't want you, value you, cherish you, respect you, it doesn't matter how beautiful, kind, accommodating, generous you are. It doesn't matter how much you try to please them or fix them or desperately hold on to them. You cannot make them want you. because they do not want you. When they got to court, she told the judge that she didn't want a divorce. The judge looked at her with pity and said, "There's nothing I can do. He," pointing at her husband,
Exactly.
"wants to divorce you." So the judge granted the divorce, and my grandmother left her husband's house with the only child that she had.
That's right.
Lesson number 3, sometimes we hold on. We fight tooth and nail to hold on to the very thing that is destroying us, the very thing that is keeping us in quicksand, the very thing that is keeping us from greatness, from our miracle, from our destiny. We'll say that we want change, but we'll refuse to let go, to let in the very thing that will set us free. Not long after the divorce, my grandmother was introduced to this gentleman. He had been married before as well. They met, it was a match. Now, this gentleman was older, around 60 years old. But guess what? After 6 miscarriages in her other marriage, my grandmother got pregnant. She gave birth to my mom at 40, my uncle at 43, and my aunt at 45. And listen, back then, a 40-year-old and a 60-year-old, it looked bleak. Lesson number 4, when life whispers to you, move, shift, get out,
do it
and you don't
afraid.
listen, the whisper will get louder. If you still don't listen, it will get louder. Get out, it'll say. What that usually looks like is the ultimate level of discomfort. But hey, you still don't listen. So life does what it has to do. It pushes you out. My grandmother used to say that she thought that being pushed out of that first marriage was the worst thing that could have ever happened to her. She didn't know that she was being pushed into her destiny. And if she
push into her destiny. I don't want to make it too long, but do it afraid, and sometimes you do have to. For me, I'll say that my divorce, although it was so hard, a lot of women, many of us, we get married to not get divorced, but it does happen. And once you accept it radically and start to do the healing, rediscover yourself, unlearn certain patterns. For me, I'll say divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it had sent me in this journey of rediscovery that I would not trade for anything else. I was so young when we got married. I was thinking like 21, 20, very young. Did not know myself like I know myself now in my 40s. Being a Christian woman, really heavily invested in the religious mindset. I didn't date anybody beyond my ex, so it was so green. I was like, I had no standard. I don't even think I had like core values like that. I had some core values, about at my base. I would trust blindly, because that's the culture says. You trust your husband, you respect your husband, you let them lead. So I let a lot of things just like, and I also was an avoidant, a people pleaser. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want the chaos. But now where I can radically set boundaries and stick with my boundaries and work on the discomfort that comes with telling people and like my preferences, and doing the dance of repair and balancing and continue to balance. And knowing patterns and knowing my own patterns and my preferences. Let me know if you've had stories like this, and I'll come back for more.
Like, it's probably, if you're having some issues in your marriage, it's not you, it's the process of marriage. It's just all hard, because guess what happens when it all works out right? You know what you end up with? Babies. Little people with their own sense of everything. They mess you up. You love them dearly, but they're a hassle. And they're demanding, and they have their own whims, and now they're in your world, in your partnership. They are they are factored into everything. So even when everything works out and you have the 3.2 kids and you got everything right, it's still going to be hard, because now you're developing a life, right? So I talk about these things because I think that people give up too quickly on marriage, right? Because there is so much friction built into the equation.
Marriage is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Being married has exposed I'm selfish. Being married has exposed I got core wounds that were never addressed in my life. Your marriage, your relationship, it's a mirror, and you can ignore it all you want. And your partner is holding up a mirror and saying, you selfish. Your partner is holding up a mirror and say, you are gaslighting me. Your partner is holding up a mirror and saying, you got to get some help. And until we do that, ladies and gentlemen, we will stay in these cycles. And I want us to break free from these cycles.
Why is marriage hard? And why don't more women get on here and talk about their positive lived marriage experiences? Have the same answer. It's because women hate men. And I say that as a woman that used to hate men myself. I hated my husband. Or at least I acted like I did. So I remember when, and I talked about this a few videos back, when I was having a conversation with my husband about change and growth, and I was bringing forth all the issues that I had with him, conviction led me to ask, what issues do you have with me? And I was surprised when he started telling me some of them because I had not heard them before. And what I learned is that men, and we're talking about good men here, they exercise a level of restraint and they can overlook certain things. We don't like to overlook anything. We got a problem. We want the problem solved. We want to tell you what that issue is right now. So every little issue, every little issue that we have with our husbands, we want to bring it up and we want it resolved right now. What I learned was that my husband was withholding issues that he had with me because they were just, whatever, it's small stuff. I don't mind. I'll deal with it. And it wasn't ever a time where he would feel the need to attack me for something that I was doing. If it was big enough, we would have a conversation about it. But there were just as many things that he had as issues with me as I had with him. And so, but the difference was he didn't change his behavior towards me. He didn't change what he was doing. He didn't change his attitude towards me. He still loved me, right? And as far as I knew, he didn't have any issue with me. But I would change and I would nag him and I would nitpick and I would pick on him continuously about these issues that I had with him. And women do the same thing. And this is, I'm saying women do the same thing. I'm a woman. Most women do the same thing. And what is apparent to me is that it is easier for us to blame shift than to stop and take accountability. Prime example, I posted a video a couple days ago, and the purpose of the video was to talk about communication and how changing the way that I communicated with my husband has made my relationship better. The example that I used was about chores and responsibility in the household, and how my husband shifted and gave our children these chores to help lessen the responsibility on my behalf. And so it's funny because the number of people that completely missed the message but focused on the chores or focused on, well, why didn't he assign himself any chores? That explains my point. We hate men so much that we want them to suffer in order for us to be happy. At the end of the day, at the end of that conversation, I did not care who did what. My problem was solved. I was happy. My husband was happy. But there were so many people who, if that had happened in their same home, it would have turned into another war. Because instead of them sitting and saying, oh, my problem is solved, they would be like, oh, wait. Now you're going to shift that and give it to the children? And this is why marriage is hard. And this is why women who are living in healthy marriages do not get on the internet and share their experiences. Because instead of, well, I will say the majority of the people, it was well received. But you do get a good bit of people who are still wanting to blame shift, not wanting to take accountability, not wanting to even compromise. Because are we really hurting anybody by giving our children chores? Not really. Do I really care if my husband doesn't pick up a dish? Not really. I used to. And I used to choose to turn those into battles where you're not washing the dishes and you're not doing this and you're not doing this. But I've learned that it's not serving anybody. It's not serving anybody. It's not. And so if you are a woman who sincerely wants the man that you're married to suffer, you're going to have a hard time in marriage. Because again, I firmly believe that women shape the dynamic of the relationship. Women shape the dynamic of the household. And the example I gave in this video where my husband had these things that he had never mentioned to me, and he was overlooking those things every day, still protecting, still providing, still being loving, still being nurturing. But I had my issues, and it's like, we about to talk about this right now, right? We about to talk about this right now, because if I'm not happy, nobody in this house is happy. And that is the mentality that makes marriage hard. That's the mentality that makes it difficult. If it's all about you and you want other people to suffer at the expense of your happiness, marriage is going to be hard for you. But if you can be reflective, if you can understand that every time I have an issue, I have to look at what part I played in this issue, and I have to look at how to effectively solve this problem, And if it means a compromise, or if it means letting this man find a solution and living with it, then we can do that. But I don't know, we pick hills to die on that are just not that serious. Like, I'm not going to die saying, oh, my children, is too much responsibility for them. They can wash a dish, they can mop a floor, they can take the clothes and take them out of the wash and hang them up on a drying stand. Like, there's other things that we can worry about. And unfortunately, those are the things that women tend to nitpick at, and want to have control over every little dynamic in their relationship, and that's what makes marriage hard. Marriage is hard because we're selfish. We want everything to go our way. We want the other person to yield to our every demand. We want them to fold and bend to what it is that we want, and that's just not fair. You're not always going to be happy with the decisions of your husband, but that's your husband. All right? And I would like to think that you have free will in saying yes to him. Even if he proposed to you, you could have said no. But now that you said, I do, here we are, friend. You're making yourself miserable. You don't have to do that. A lot of times we're just very uncomfortable with pouring into the men that we say that we love through marriage. We're very uncomfortable with expressing ourselves in a way that's loving and not degrading. Because I will say, a lot of times we don't realize that the result that we get from our husbands can be directly impacted by how mean and nasty we can be. Right? And even if you're not being mean and nasty, but if you're being indifferent, if you're over there keeping score, if you're over there mad at him because he didn't wash the dishes, if you're over there mad at him because he didn't take the laundry or the trash out, whatever it is, whatever story you're telling yourself in your head that he hates you because he didn't do that thing, it's making you miserable, and it's making your marriage harder because you're telling yourself this lie of a story that he doesn't love you because he's not doing this, that he doesn't care about you because he's doing this, that he's selfish because he's doing this. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It really doesn't, friend. And I think the sooner we realize that, if we step out of that selfishness and we step into a point of like trying to be service-based, trying to show up for this man the way that you showed up for him when you was dating him, you were sure trying to impress him back then. What happened, girl? So the second we can kind of turn off that selfishness switch and lean more into service, lean more into being loving, lean more into being kind and patient, enduring a little bit of long suffering, I think the better our experience with marriage can be, right? So that's probably why it's hard for you right now. And if it is hard for you, not too hard though. Like, don't be in here completely hating your husband and trying to enroll in wifey school. But if you feel like you're struggling and you feel like you could benefit from being around other women who might be in a situation, you know, we love our husbands, but girl, this is hard and this man is working my nerve. What do I do? Long story short, just submit to him and stop fighting with the man. That's the long story short. But sometimes we struggle with the isms and the in-betweens of that, right? And we talk about all of those things in wifey school. So if you want to join, enrollment is now open. You can go ahead and click the link in my bio and join. If you want to work through it alone, just grab the wifey challenge. You'll still get the journal and all of the prompts, all of the supplemental material. And if you want to work through it alone, but you don't want the printout, you're going to get the wifey journal. Now that one doesn't come with any extra material. You download it. If you want to print it, you have to print it on your own. But those are the 3 options for you, friend. Looking forward to seeing you in class.
Marriage is wonderful, but it's hard.
Yeah.
You're 2 people. You're 2 different people, and you're trying to figure out life together and be agreeable for the majority of it, or have to compromise for the majority of it so you can live together. And I've talked about the fact that over the years, we've had amazing years and we've had really hard years, like really hard years on the brink of divorce years. And in those times, I would just go for drives because I was crying, I was over it. And I felt like God got it wrong. It was just like, this can't be right. Why should we stay together, God? Even though there's no biblical reason, because there are a few biblical reasons for divorce. But if there's not, that doesn't check the box. I'm like, what do you just want us to stay together, just to stay together? But we're going to be 2 bitter Christians? Is that really represent?
If you've ever said something to your husband and it took for somebody else to say it to him for it to click, or if you're a husband and you said something to your wife and it took for somebody else to say the very same thing for it to click, I want you to know that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not that they're not listening to you. It's just that, and it's not even that they didn't get value in it or wanted to listen to you. It's that it didn't click. And that's just a normal thing. Sometimes we take that as a dig, but it's not. And if we take it as a dig, that's really just showing how egotistical we are. And I say that, this is something I learned with homeschooling. Like, if I'm teaching my kids, this happens too. If I'm teaching my kids something in math and I'm going over a concept and I'm explaining it, Sometimes they get it, but sometimes it's like, girl, they gotta go watch a YouTube video. They gotta get on the internet and like watch this video or do these exercises. They might even come back with an entirely different method. I don't care. As long as you know that 2 plus 2 is 4, I don't care how you got to the answer. Your brain works the way that it works. And so it's easy for us to say something like that when it's pertaining to like teaching your kids math or teaching your kids something. But we get very offended when it's in our relationships. And it's like, well, I explained to you that this is how I like for things to be done. Or I explained to you that this is how I feel when you shut me out. Again, though, coming from the wife who is already upset and frustrated and explaining the thing, it might not land as coming from the homeboy like, bro, you did this, this, and this, and you know how it is when we do this and she feel like that, and then it might be like, oh. Coming from the husband who is frustrated and explaining to his wife something, she might be hurting in her feelings, but then if she reads it in a book or she hears it from her friend, she's able to receive it. We cannot be offended at the way that people receive things. And I only bring that up because I get a lot of men that say, oh, it took for a woman to read a book to understand this concept. Y'all just don't listen to men. And I want you to know that it's less that people are not listening to each other, and it's more that sometimes the message that you think you're giving is not landing. And I remember this is how I got better at communication, just by being more patient, because I had to come to the realization that a lot of times people hear something that you didn't say. And sometimes when people watch my videos, they'll say you did a lot of over explaining for a very simple concept. And I'm like, no, I know enough about talking to people that if I don't over explain, somebody is going to take what I say and misinterpret it. People are going to do that anyway. But if I anticipate that what I just said might be misunderstood, let me add a layer of clarification. And I think sometimes we're so impatient in our communication that we just say the thing, and it's like, if you don't get it, you're stupid and you're frustrating me. But it's a little bit more than that. You have to explain it. You have to say why sometimes. You have to give those justifications. You have to lay it on thick, and you have to explain things to people in such a simple way that it almost feels like you're talking to a kindergartner. But it's not to be degrading. It's not because you think they're stupid. It's because when you explain something like you're talking to a kindergartner, you know what you do? You throw out all the fluff. You throw out all the fancy jargon. You throw out all the isms and the colloquialisms and all of these conversational words. And you just say the thing, and then you explain it. If a child asks you something, you explain it very plain and simply because you want them to be able to understand it. But with adults, we are in our frustration. We get impatient because you should know this already. Why should I have to keep saying this? And then that frustration leads us to say the thing. We don't really clarify. We don't have a lot of patience. Sometimes we're speaking in anger and frustration, and then it's not well received on the other side. And then we're like, well, why did you have to go and talk to this person to figure that out? Why did this? I've been saying it for da-da-da-da-da. You got to move out of your ego and just understand, like, okay, at least they got it. Because I'll tell you, I used to get upset when that would happen. It's like, I told that man that I said the same thing. Why did it take for him to say that? Why did it take for him to watch it in the video? But I realized, you know what? I don't really care, because problem solved. He gets it now. Do we want the people to get it, or do we want to complain and fuss and whine about how I said it first and you didn't listen to me? I think that that's some food for thought.
There are 3 things that my failed marriage has taught me. Know yourself before entering any relationship. So I didn't have a lot of dating experience. So I didn't know my likes, my dislikes. I didn't know my negotiables and my non-negotiables. I didn't have a standard. Anything went with me. So for me, I would say that I would have dated a little to know those things and know myself a little bit more that way. What that person is in the present is probably most likely what will be in the marriage. So don't listen when they be like, oh, when we get married, I'm gonna change, because most of the time that's not going to be the case. They only change if they want to change. People don't really change because you want them to change. They have to find it in themselves to change. So a lot of times, if you don't like what you see in the present, girl, just go and run. Last is actions speak louder than words. I think that one is really important for me because words are just that, words. Take them with a grain of salt, okay? What that person does towards you, like the action they do towards you, is what they really feel about you. The things that they saying does not matter if their action doesn't line up. So For me, I'm always going to choose action.
I've learned in my marriage after being together for 9 years and married for 5 years. Second, you say I do, it becomes your immediate family. I often talk about communication being important in relationship, but I would argue that comprehension is way more important. This is something I wish I learned way earlier in our relationship, because I did learn later on that I listened to respond and not listen to understand. Take your husband on a date. Take your boyfriend on a date. My husband deserves to be wine and dine the same way he wines and dines. Date your boundaries loud and clear. You fall in love with your partner all over again after they become parents. I don't know how to explain it, but I couldn't have imagined that I would love him more than I did. But I do. I love him so much more after watching him as a father. Well, effort can only get you so far. I used to think, well, at least I tried. No. Actually succeed next time. Do not share anything with anyone about your marriage until you have worked through it and you can actually take opinions without letting it affect you. His world does not resolve around you, and it shouldn't. I know they say love is supposed to hurt, but I don't think so. Everything gets better with time. Exit time, your communication, how you interact, how you flirt.
Ready with me as I discuss 7 things I've learned in 7 years of marriage. So today is my 7-year anniversary, and we've been married for 7 years, but we've been together as a couple for a decade. And I never feel old until I tell people how long I've been married. I actually got married young, but still. So within 7 years of marriage and a decade of dating, I've learned a thing or two about how to sustain a marriage. One of the biggest lessons that I want to impart to you all is something that I'm actually learning this year. And it's sad that it's taking me 7 years to realize this, but better late than never. I'm learning that as a wife and as a mother, I have a huge influence on the environment that I live in. Meaning, if I have a bad attitude, everyone in the house is going to feel it. If I have a great positive attitude, everyone in the house is going to feel it. And I feel like I knew this a long time ago, but I always resented it. I felt like, why should it be up to me to have to usher in a positive attitude into my home? But I'm realizing now that the more I embrace that, it actually ends up being a benefit to me and subsequently to everyone else in my life. This is especially true in my marriage, and it ties into the second lesson that I've learned, which is I am much happier in my marriage when I focus on myself instead of on my spouse. Yeah. Often, I would get so irritated with my husband when he wouldn't do things the way that I thought he should be doing. And so I would focus all of my energy in trying to make him better, and it would just make me resent him and feel angry and not be happy in my marriage. It's not my job to make my husband better. And it's not my job to focus on all the areas that he's not doing great in, because if he did that to me, let's face it, I'd be very irritated with him. The more I focus on bettering myself and ushering peace into my house and doing things that I need to do to make myself feel good, that automatically puts me at peace so that I can show up and give grace to my husband and enjoy our relationship more. It doesn't mean that I set the bar lower for him. It just means that I create a safe space for him to learn how to be his best self without pressure of needing to be perfect. And that encourages him, just as it would encourage me, to buckle down and focus on improving myself for the sake of my spouse. The third thing that I learned, which is super cliche, but actually very, very important, is to never go to sleep angry. And seriously, don't do it. A couple of times that Evan and I have gone to sleep angry have always resulted in an argument lasting longer than it need to and resentment taking root in our hearts. Not to mention the fact that I am such a cuddler and I sleep horribly if I can't cuddle Evan at night. So it's just a lose-lose for everyone involved. More importantly, the reason why it's such a huge benefit to not go to sleep angry, it forces you and your spouse to work out whatever issues you have because you know you have a time crunch. That leads me to my fourth lesson, and that is the longer that you're with your spouse, you're going to start noticing things about them that trigger them or that make them angry or that put them in a good mood. It's in your best interest to not have really difficult conversations when they're not in a good mood. It seems obvious, but you would be surprised how tempting it is to bring up a topic that you are passionate about, that you know will cause an argument when you're ready to talk about it, even if you know your spouse is not ready to talk about it. Sometimes it's better to just hold your tongue and schedule time for you and your spouse to discuss these issues so that you both can come to the conversation sober-minded and not feeling attacked. The fifth lesson that I've learned since being married is that friends make better lovers. They just do. Instead of focusing on trying to bring sexy back to your marriage, just be playful with one another. And I guarantee you, sixth lesson I learned, and this honestly is really because of the person that I married, always try to find humor in any situation, and it will keep your marriage playful, and any argument you have can easily be diffused. Seventh and last lesson that I've learned since being married for 7 years is that marriage has seasons. You may not always feel romantic towards your partner. And you may go through seasons where you feel like you're just roommates, especially if you have kids. But don't throw in the towel. It's normal. It's a part of your story, and it will all make sense the longer you're together and the more deeply connected you guys become. Let me show you what I'm going to wear tonight for our date night. There seemed to be a lot of interest in the video I recently uploaded of the 7 lessons I learned in 7 years of marriage. So here are 3 more lessons I've learned. Okay, so the first lesson that I want to impart to you all today might be a little controversial because it can easily be taken out of context, but please consider that this advice comes from a relationship dynamic where we both have mutual respect for each other. The lesson is to never publicly embarrass your spouse. I'll give you a quick example of what I mean by that. One day, my husband and I went to a wedding reception for a friend of ours. And we were sitting at a table with people we didn't really know that well, but some of them we did know. So while we were at this table, I was telling a story to bond with one of the ladies that I didn't yet know, trying to forge some sort of relationship. And we were talking about some topic that honestly escapes me because it was very trivial. But in my trying to relate to this lady, I said something that was just incorrect. It was some sort of fact that I got wrong, some song I got wrong. I don't really remember. But the point is, I didn't get it right. But the person I was speaking to didn't really catch that I got it wrong. Now, my husband, one thing to know about him is that he is a trivia aficionado. He not only knows a lot of trivia, but he actually really enjoys trivia. And so when I got this information wrong, he decided to point it out and say, no, that's not right. It's actually whatever the answer was. Now, again, this seems very trivial on its surface, but it really embarrassed me in front of the lady that I was trying to connect with. The point is, in the moment, I felt like my partner wasn't there backing me up. My husband and I had a really good conversation afterward about what it means to take up for your partner and not publicly embarrass them. Again, this is a trivial example that really is meaningless, but the lesson remains true. In creating a safe environment for your spouse, you want to ensure that you don't embarrass them, that you have their back. This doesn't mean that you don't call them out when they're blatantly wrong on something with meaning, but if it's something meaningless or if it's something that's really important to them, it's probably better off to just stand by them and then have a conversation later at home. The second lesson was a really hard one for me to learn, but when I finally embraced it, it helped my marriage out tremendously. And it's the idea that when you get married, there is a third party to the two of you that needs to be considered at all times. It's as if the marriage is a whole nother person that needs to be considered when making decisions. I'll give you another quick example. When my husband and I first got married, we moved to Michigan. We're originally from California. We lived there our entire lives, and we decided to move to Michigan so that he could go to law school. But 3 months after living in Michigan, I was totally over it, and I wanted to move back to California as soon as possible. Now, this was a big disagreement in our marriage because I could not for the life of me see myself living in a state that was so foreign to what I was used to. It wasn't until I saw one of the counselors from my church that I considered that maybe moving to Michigan would be best for our marriage. And there's a distinction there. I was considering what was best for me, and Evan was considering what was best for him. But we weren't considering what was best for the third party, namely our marriage. In every disagreement you have with your partner, or in every big decision you make with your partner, it's easy to come into those conversations thinking about yourself. But in order to get past what's good for me or what's good for you, you have to consider what's best for your marriage. When you're married, you're creating a whole different being. Once you start treating your marriage like a third participant, it becomes a bit easier to make those tough decisions. Okay, and the third and final lesson is when you are in heated discussions or full-blown arguments, try your hardest to avoid all or nothing statements. What it means basically is when you're in an argument and you're talking about something that you're passionate about, it's really easy to say, you never do X or you always do X. Well, the reason why that's so harmful to your marriage is because it takes away from any time or effort that your partner actually did doing something that you're accusing them of not doing, and it immediately puts them on the defense. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any... This is my husband. Have any advice for being married in 7 years? One piece of advice.
When you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and tell yourself you're worthless, you have nothing about her.
We have a healthy marriage, clearly. Let me know if you know which comedian said that. Do you even know which
Yes,
comedian?
I know.
Don't say it out loud. Say it in my ear. Yeah. Okay, fine, great.
I think one of the biggest regrets in marriage for me is that I wished I'd picked a man that had friends. Because a man without friends is practicing friendship on you, is practicing loyalty. And I'm not talking about having siblings because they all drank from the same well. I'm talking about having other men in his life that he has relationship with that are standard bearers, that hold him accountable, that he can lean on and be vulnerable with. If he doesn't have that already, then he's practicing with you. Because we might think that in that moment when he shares, oh, this is the first time that I've ever been able to be vulnerable and open with anyone, is a flex. I think it's more like a warning sign. Because the minute that there is any tension and conflict, guess what? He is closing down. He is shutting down shop. Because he hasn't developed the emotional bandwidth or the relationship muscle required for a healthy coupling. And again, I'm not talking about familial relationships because they are fraught with all kinds of obligations. And so where he may show up for his family does not mean that he will show up for you.
In this world, there are different types of married couples. There are the couples that secretly hate each other, but stay together because of a sense of duty or stigma or whatever. And then there are couples that have been together for decades and everybody feels the love. And I want to talk about the latter. One thing I noticed about that group, they are genuinely friends. Like, they share hobbies together, they gossip together, they talk about things, they do things. Like, I've written about this before online about the importance of being friends with your partner. But one thing about these couples, they genuinely like each other as people, which makes them friends. Another thing I noticed is that even though they're friends, they are way more than comfortable with doing things apart. Like in a very, very healthy way. Not in a I need to get away from them kind of way, but in a I need to spend time with my other friends kind of way. Like the woman will go on holidays with their girls, the men will have things he does with his boys. Like they have lives outside of their relationship, very healthy lives, and they often involve each other in their personal lives as well. Like they have a lot of mutual friends too. I noticed that. And one thing I can't deny is that there is attraction. Like, have you ever met a couple? They've been together for like 20, 30 years, but you can still see they can't keep their hands off each other. Like, they're still PDA, they're affectionate. You see them kissing, you see them dancing, you see them hugging. Like, I love that. And I notice that in the couples that are married and enjoying their marriage versus the couples that are married and secretly detesting one another. They also, because they like each other as people, they also do a lot together. Like they're the couples that go on vacations together, that go on cruises together, that go golfing together, that go to art classes together. Like they involve one another in their like independent hobbies and they have mutual hobbies together. Another thing I noticed about these couples is that they are the couples that talk. They're not the couples that brush things under the carpet. They're not the couples that live with secret resentment for each other. They air their grievances out. Like they will have open, honest, transparent communication. They're the couples that will embark in counseling or therapy if things are a bit rocky. They're the couples that talk to their kids and actually have like open communication with their children. Like communication is a very, very key part of their relationship. There's also a sense of pride there. And I gather that pride comes from respect because when respect is done in a relationship, yeah, you might as well call it quits because you're not proud of your person anymore. You're not proud of the relationship anymore. But I guess because they trust each other, they share mutual values and those values are respected, they respect each other, which makes them proud of one another. These are the husbands that be shouting up and down, this is my wife, look at my wife, I love my wife. Like they love each other out loud. And you see the wives, oh, my husband, my man, my man, my man. Like, anyway, I was just thinking about it the other day because when I thought about the relationships I know that have lasted the test of time and that are happy, those are a few things that string them together. And yeah, I aspire.